To outsiders, Julia appeared poised, elegant, and confident, exactly the kind of leader who could effortlessly rebuild an empire. Yet, only months earlier, this same ballroom had witnessed a storm of scandal, betrayal, and an unforgettable revelation. It was here that Julia had publicly exposed the truth about her husband's deceit, calmly confronting Connor Weston about his affair with Vanessa Hart, the ambitious marketing executive who mistakenly believed she could replace Julia in both business and marriage. In a viral story that captivated millions online, Julia revealed a shocking truth. Connor's empire had never truly belonged to him. Behind his charismatic facade, Julia had quietly built and safeguarded every asset, leveraging wisdom inherited from her grandmother, a formidable heiress who taught her never to place her trust or financial future fully in a man's hands. Audiences worldwide were fascinated by Julia's quiet resilience and strategic brilliance as she reclaimed her rightful position, dismantling Connor's carefully constructed illusion of control. Social media praised her dignified response, with countless viewers celebrating the power of her calm, calculated strength, turning Julia into an instant icon of empowerment. Tonight, amid the gentle hum of conversation, laughter, and soft music filling the resort's renovated ballroom, Julia felt the profound weight of her journey. She recalled clearly the humiliating text message from Vanessa that had sparked her quiet revolution, a taunting provocation intended to shatter her confidence. Instead, it had ignited a fire of determination that transformed Julia from the hidden strategist into the public face of leadership. She glanced briefly toward a portrait of her grandmother, displayed proudly near the podium, drawing strength from the woman who had laid the foundations of Julia's invisible empire decades before. Tonight marked not just a rebirth of the Weston Alpine Resort, but a public celebration of the courage, integrity, and resilience Julia embodied, qualities that resonated profoundly with the millions who followed her compelling journey online. As the guests settled and the room quieted, Julia moved confidently toward the microphone, ready to share the next chapter of her remarkable story, unaware that unseen threats from her past were already gathering in the shadows, determined to challenge her newfound power. In the months following the dramatic exposure of Connor and Vanessa's betrayal, Julia embraced her role as CEO of Weston Alpine Resort with grace, dignity, and unwavering determination. Under her leadership, the resort flourished, becoming synonymous not only with luxury but also integrity, a stark departure from Connor's profit-driven reputation. Julia implemented policies emphasizing transparency and fairness, earning widespread admiration from guests, employees, and business partners alike. As news of her triumph spread virally online, public opinion surged in her favor, elevating Julia into a symbol of empowerment and ethical leadership. She appeared regularly in interviews and media features, always poised and humble, reflecting genuine empathy and emotional maturity that deeply resonated with millions. Yet beneath this tranquil facade of success, Julia was quietly attuned to subtle signals of unrest. Something unsettling lingered in the shadows, vague but persistent, hinting that not all past wounds had fully healed. Occasionally, Julia would notice whispers among resort staff or brief hesitation from longtime clients during phone calls, moments she dismissed outwardly, but privately noted with cautious unease. She'd learned from her grandmother that vigilance was essential, especially when one appeared strongest. Julie often spent quiet evenings reflecting in her chalet, reviewing detailed reports on the resort's operations. Despite rising profits, minor irregularities surfaced, an unexplained uptick in canceled reservations, subtle yet negative anonymous online reviews questioning resort safety or service quality, and sudden hesitation from potential investors who previously showed enthusiasm. Initially, Julia attributed these small disruptions to natural fluctuations, but a deeper instinct warned otherwise. As much as she wanted to believe the turmoil was behind her, Julia knew better. Connor and Vanessa, though publicly disgraced, remained resourceful and driven by resentment. Julia realized the peace she carefully nurtured was delicate, fragile, and easily disturbed. Quietly determined not to underestimate anyone again, Julia discreetly contacted Margaret Ellison, her steadfast attorney and confidant, initiating a confidential inquiry into these disturbances. Though outwardly calm, Julia prepared herself internally, sensing clearly that the temporary peace was merely the calm before an approaching storm. Across town, hidden within a modest apartment far removed from the luxurious lifestyle they'd once enjoyed, Connor Weston and Vanessa Hart struggled with the humiliation and bitterness of their downfall. No longer surrounded by Aspen's elite, Connor's charm had faded into a veneer of restless anger, while Vanessa's carefully curated professional image had shattered into pieces of lost credibility. Both unemployed and isolated from their once admiring social circles, they simmered nightly over their shared resentment toward Julia, blaming her for the loss of their status, wealth, and power. In their distorted perception, Julia had stolen everything they believed belonged to them, conveniently ignoring their own betrayal as the root cause. Driven by desperation, Connor began quietly reaching out to former business associates still sympathetic to his cause, gradually regaining influence within certain circles by portraying himself as the unfair victim of Julia's vindictive actions. Vanessa, skilled in manipulation and determined to rebuild her reputation, exploited social connections she had cultivated carefully during her brief tenure at the resort. Together, they hatched a subtle yet malicious plan designed to destabilize Julia's leadership of Weston Alpine Resort, tarnish its newly pristine image, and ultimately force her out of power. With Vanessa's experience in digital marketing, they first began posting carefully anonymous negative reviews on influential travel websites, subtly casting doubt on Julia's ability to maintain the resort's renowned standard. Their sabotage quickly escalated into quietly persuading key clients to cancel reservations, feeding them false rumors about financial instability or safety concerns at the resort. Vanessa even covertly contacted influential travel bloggers, dropping hints of scandalous activities happening behind Weston Alpine's polished facade. Meanwhile, Connor exploited lingering personal friendships with influential investors, hinting at fabricated operational struggles and exaggerated internal conflicts at the resort, subtly undermining Julia's credibility. Their strategy was simple yet sinister: create a relentless atmosphere of doubt, uncertainty, and mistrust around Julia's leadership, gradually weakening her from multiple angles until she appeared incapable of managing her own empire. Although outwardly, their plan focused on restoring their public image, privately, it was fueled by a darker, personal desire for revenge. Each setback at Weston Alpine Resort offering a twisted sense of satisfaction. Emboldened by each minor success, they envisioned the eventual public humiliation of Julia Weston as their redemption. Unaware that Julia was already sensing the threat, Connor and Vanessa pursued their sabotage, oblivious that their blind bitterness and arrogance were leading them directly into the waiting trap of Julia's quiet but formidable resilience. As winter deepened and snow blanketed Aspen in brilliant white, subtle but persistent disruptions began quietly undermining Weston Alpine Resort's thriving operations. Initially minor, the signs soon became impossible for Julia to dismiss as mere coincidence. The resort's usually impeccable reservation list started showing unexplained cancellations, longtime VIP clients abruptly pulling out without clear reason. When Julia personally reached out, their answers were polite, yet vague, hinting at rumors they'd heard about declining quality or questionable leadership. Even more troubling were sudden negative online reviews appearing with alarming frequency, each precisely crafted to question Julia's management abilities and cast doubts about guests' safety, food quality, or service reliability. These anonymous complaints were posted strategically on influential review platforms, targeting peak booking periods, causing potential visitors to reconsider their stays. The damaging feedback, although largely unfounded, was skillfully composed, reflecting an insider's intimate knowledge of resort operations, subtly and insidiously chipping away at Weston Alpine's carefully restored reputation. Julia also noticed hesitation emerging from prospective corporate partners who previously expressed enthusiasm about new business ventures. Meetings scheduled to finalize lucrative partnerships mysteriously fell through or got indefinitely postponed. Julia sensed unease in the conversations, a guardedness hinting they'd been quietly warned off by someone familiar with resort operations. The most disconcerting moment came when Julia received a confidential tip from a concerned junior executive, suggesting someone was discreetly leaking internal resort information, staff schedules, event bookings, even financial data, leading Julia to suspect internal sabotage. As the troubling incidents multiplied, Julia maintained her outward composure, determined not to show vulnerability publicly or alarm her dedicated employees. Privately, however, she knew these incidents weren't random. She recognized the manipulative fingerprints of Connor and Vanessa, understanding clearly that their desperation had shifted from resentment to active sabotage. Julia quietly began taking meticulous notes of each disruption, documenting timelines, patterns, and possible connections. Reflecting on lessons from her grandmother about strength through vigilance, Julia resolved not to underestimate her opponents again. In confidential conversations with Margaret Ellison, her steadfast attorney and friend, Julia admitted the gravity of the situation and requested discreet assistance to investigate these suspicious activities thoroughly. Together, they agreed that decisive action was necessary, but not before they had irrefutable proof. Julia's calm exterior never wavered as she methodically began gathering evidence, mindful that patience and precision had previously been her greatest strengths. Her invisible resilience once again became her weapon as she prepared to expose the hidden threat, determined this time to end the sabotage permanently. One evening, as snow gently fell outside, blanketing Aspen in quiet beauty, Julia's meticulous preparations finally yielded crucial results. She sat alone in her private office, quietly sifting through detailed investigative reports delivered discreetly by Margaret's trusted security expert. Within minutes, her suspicions were confirmed beyond doubt. Surveillance logs, digital footprints, and intercepted communications formed a clear and undeniable pattern. Connor and Vanessa had been systematically orchestrating the resort's recent setbacks. Julia discovered emails revealing how Vanessa covertly reached out to former clients, planting false rumors about declining standards and financial instability. Connor, equally implicated, had secretly convinced influential business associates to withdraw pending agreements, damaging the resort's credibility. The extent of their sabotage stunned Julia, not because of its sophistication, but because of the depth of their bitterness and desperation. Yet, despite feeling deeply betrayed once again, she remained resolute, understanding that emotion could not cloud her judgment now. While reading through emails and transcripts of secret conversations, Julia came across evidence of their ultimate goal, pushing her into stepping down as CEO, planning to frame her as incapable of leadership amid mounting pressures. The audacity of their plan, aimed at humiliating her publicly, sparked within Julia not despair but renewed resolve. The investigative file also included discreetly recorded conversations, revealing Connor's cold contempt, describing Julia dismissively as someone easily manipulated by emotion, a comment that reinforced her determination never to reveal vulnerability again. What cut deeper, though, was the active participation of certain employees, individuals Julia had trusted, bribed, or persuaded by Vanessa's promises of future power. As the magnitude of betrayal sank in, Julia took a deep breath, calmly closing the report. Instead of succumbing to anger or grief, she drew strength from lessons long taught by her grandmother. The deepest betrayal demanded the strongest response, not through emotional outbursts, but through careful strategic action, Quietly yet decisively, Julia called Margaret, sharing the full extent of their discovery. She knew this confrontation would require even more strength and determination than before. Without hesitation, she authorized Margaret to proceed with a carefully planned counteroffensive, a trap that would expose Connor and Vanessa publicly and conclusively. As Julia prepared to once again turn betrayal into triumph, she reminded herself of her greatest lesson thus far. Resilience was not the absence of hurt, but the courage to rise calmly above it. Julia knew that confronting Connor and Vanessa required precision rather than haste, strategy rather than impulse. Determined to expose their sabotage definitively, she met privately with Margaret Ellison and her carefully selected legal and security team, outlining a meticulous, multi-layered plan designed not only to halt the damage, but to publicly unveil the extent of their betrayal. Together, they constructed an elegant yet decisive strategy to turn the tables completely. First, Julia authorized Margaret's cybersecurity expert to discreetly create false operational documents, intentionally fabricated internal memos and financial reports designed to appear vulnerable, bait, irresistible to Connor and Vanessa. These documents were carefully seeded where only Vanessa's compromised contacts within the resort staff would find them, knowing they would soon reach Connor. Meanwhile, Julia maintained an outward facade of vulnerability, allowing misleading rumors to circulate about potential business instability, intentionally giving the impression that their sabotage was working. Simultaneously, Julia quietly strengthened genuine relationships with loyal resort employees and trusted stakeholders, privately reassuring them of the resort's stability and securing their unwavering support. By carefully managing both realities, an appearance of weakness to Connor and Vanessa, and quiet strength behind closed doors, Julia set the stage for her opponent's downfall. Connor and Vanessa eagerly took the bait, emboldened by their apparent success. As predicted, they quickly acted on the falsified information, accelerating their attacks, unknowingly stepping directly into Julia's carefully laid trap. Every action they took, each phone call or email secretly recorded, became additional evidence carefully catalogued by Margaret's team. Julia's patience was unwavering. Rather than reacting prematurely, she allowed their overconfidence to build, knowing arrogance would eventually blind them to caution. One evening, during an exclusive industry gala held at Westin Alpine, attended by influential clients, partners, and members of the press, Julia calmly prepared to deliver the decisive blow. Connor and Vanessa, assured of their imminent triumph, arrived smugly, anticipating Julia's public embarrassment. Instead, halfway through Julia's poised welcome speech, projected screens behind her displayed a shocking montage. Security footage, recorded conversations, and digital evidence revealing Connor and Vanessa's sabotage in detail. A stunned silence fell over the crowd as their voices echoed clearly through hidden speakers, outlining their cynical intentions to dismantle Julia's leadership for personal revenge. With quiet dignity, Julia addressed the room, explaining the necessity of transparency and accountability, her voice steady yet filled with conviction. Connor's arrogance quickly dissolved into visible panic, while Vanessa, mortified, tried unsuccessfully to slip away unnoticed. As security discreetly escorted them out, Julia remained poised, reinforcing the values of integrity and resilience the resort stood for. The audience, moved by Julia's calm strength and strategic brilliance, erupted into applause, publicly validating her leadership. Julia's carefully orchestrated response had not only neutralized the threat, but also reaffirmed her position stronger than ever. With the trap sprung perfectly, Julia turned the tables completely, transforming what Connor and Vanessa had intended as her downfall into a powerful demonstration of quiet strength, strategic mastery, and unwavering dignity, qualities now undeniably synonymous with her leadership. The luxurious ballroom fell utterly silent, guests frozen mid-conversation, eyes wide with astonishment. Behind Julia Weston, massive projection screens revealed undeniable proof of Connor Weston and Vanessa Hart's meticulously orchestrated sabotage. Captivating the audience were transcripts of damaging emails, surveillance footage clearly capturing secret meetings, and audio recordings where Connor and Vanessa brazenly discussed their plans to destroy Julia's reputation and reclaim power over Weston Alpine Resort. Connor's voice echoed chillingly through the room, arrogantly describing Julia as weak and easily manipulated. Vanessa's laughter followed, cold and calculated, relishing her imagined victory over Julia's public humiliation. As each damning piece of evidence unfolded, the disbelief in the ballroom turned to shock, then outrage. Connor and Vanessa stood rooted to the floor, their smug expressions rapidly giving way to panic and disbelief. They exchanged frantic, accusatory glances, desperate to escape scrutiny but trapped firmly in the spotlight Julia had deliberately created. Julia stood poised and composed at the podium, quietly observing the shockwaves spreading throughout the room. After allowing the evidence to speak clearly for itself, she calmly stepped forward, addressing the guests with dignified clarity. Her voice, steady and resolute, resonated through the silence, capturing everyone's attention. Integrity isn't proven when things are easy. It's revealed in moments of difficulty, betrayal, and conflict. I chose transparency tonight because honesty should always prevail over deceit. The sincerity and quiet strength behind her words immediately connected with everyone present. Her calm demeanor contrasted starkly with Connor's rapidly deteriorating composure. His initial attempts to deny involvement failed miserably, with each word further solidifying his guilt in the eyes of those present. A single authoritative glance from Julia toward security staff resulted in discreetly escorting Connor and Vanessa toward the exit, their faces flushed with humiliation. Before leaving, Connor paused momentarily, angrily turning toward Julia, desperate for a final word. "You think you've won?" he spat bitterly. Julia met his gaze with unwavering strength, replying calmly yet firmly. "This was never about winning, Connor. It was about protecting what's genuinely valuable: integrity, respect, and trust, the things you carelessly discarded." Connor's silence was deafening, his fury slowly replaced by an uncomfortable realization of his utter defeat. Vanessa, her previous arrogance shattered, quietly avoided eye contact, realizing that her manipulation had irrevocably destroyed her own career prospects. As the doors closed behind them, the tension dissipated, replaced by a spontaneous eruption of applause that filled the ballroom. Guests approached Julia warmly, offering heartfelt admiration for her courage and determination. Many openly expressed gratitude, inspired by her powerful example of resilience under extraordinary pressure. Yet, privately reflected on the emotional toll of publicly confronting betrayal once again. Despite the personal pain, she understood clearly that this dramatic exposure had been necessary, not only to protect her business, but to firmly establish a corporate culture built on honesty and accountability. With calm dignity, Julia gently redirected the evening toward positivity, inviting everyone to celebrate integrity, truth, and resilience, the core values upon which her empire would now firmly stand. The immediate aftermath of Connor and Vanessa's public exposure was swift and unrelenting. Within days, Margaret Ellison's legal team filed comprehensive lawsuits against them, supported by the irrefutable evidence meticulously gathered by Julia. Charges ranged from defamation and corporate sabotage to breach of confidentiality and conspiracy, creating an overwhelming legal storm that Connor and Vanessa were utterly unprepared to withstand. Their once loyal allies abandoned them instantly, unwilling to risk their reputations by associating with individuals so publicly disgraced. As legal pressures mounted, Connor faced substantial financial penalties, including damages owed to Weston Alpine Resort for lost business and reputational harm. Vanessa's career prospects vanished overnight. Her professional credibility permanently damaged, she became unemployable within the luxury hospitality industry. Public opinion, intensified by social media's rapid virality, quickly sealed their fates. Online discussions passionately celebrated Julia's courage and resilience, while harshly condemning Connor and Vanessa's malicious actions. Viral hashtags such as Julia Strong and Integrity Wins emerged, fueling widespread conversation about workplace ethics, female empowerment, and moral leadership. Journalists eagerly recounted Julia's inspiring journey, praising her as an embodiment of quiet strength who triumphed against deceit through dignity and integrity. Conversely, Connor and Vanessa faced relentless criticism, their names synonymous with dishonesty, arrogance, and betrayal. News outlets closely documented every aspect of their downfall, transforming their once glamorous lives into cautionary tales of greed and moral bankruptcy. Connor's personal life rapidly deteriorated. Former friends and business partners severed ties, distancing themselves to avoid contamination from his disgrace. Unable to manage mounting legal costs, Connor was forced to downsize significantly, living quietly in isolation, shunned by the social circles he once dominated. Vanessa, equally ostracized, left Aspen abruptly, attempting to rebuild a new life elsewhere, yet continually haunted by the permanent stain of scandal that followed her online. Even Connor's desperate private plea for Julia's forgiveness was politely but decisively rejected, further emphasizing his permanent exclusion from her life. Though Julia retained empathy for the emotional devastation they faced, she clearly recognized the necessity of firm boundaries and consequences. Julia, meanwhile, experienced a profound validation as both a leader and an individual. Colleagues, clients, and the broader community rallied around her, solidifying her reputation as an ethical and inspirational leader. This powerful public and legal affirmation of her leadership strengthened Weston Alpine Resort, positioning it not only as an elite destination, but as an enduring symbol of integrity and resilience. Julia's quiet triumph resonated widely, forever shifting the narrative from victimhood to empowerment. In the quiet moments following the intensity of the public revelations and courtroom victories, Julia found herself deeply reflecting on her emotional journey. She'd weathered betrayal, humiliation, and sabotage, yet emerged stronger, wiser, and more authentically herself than ever before. One crisp, clear morning, as sunlight sparkled across fresh snow, Julia visited her grandmother's gravesite, an intimate ritual she often turned to in times of contemplation. Standing in quiet reverence, Julia allowed herself the vulnerability she'd guarded so carefully through months of public scrutiny. She reflected on her grandmother's lessons, that true strength lay not in dominance or revenge, but in dignity, resilience, and compassion. Julia recognized that her greatest triumph wasn't merely regaining her business empire or publicly exposing betrayal, but discovering within herself an inner strength capable of enduring and thriving through adversity. Julia's transformation was profoundly personal. She'd spent much of her marriage carefully maintaining appearances, silently holding the real power, while outwardly conforming to the role others expected. Now, unburdened by pretense, she found freedom in expressing her authentic self openly. Public leadership forced Julia to confront her deepest fears: fear of judgment, of vulnerability, of inadequacy. And through this confrontation, she uncovered a profound sense of purpose and self-worth. Each act of sabotage she overcame, each betrayal she rose above, deepened her emotional maturity, guiding her toward genuine self-acceptance and self-respect. As the weeks passed, Julia noticed subtle yet powerful changes within herself. Previously hidden insecurities faded, replaced by calm confidence and emotional clarity. Instead of bitterness, she cultivated empathy, even compassion, for those who wronged her, understanding that their actions arose from their own deep insecurities and flaws. She chose forgiveness, not because Connor and Vanessa deserved absolution, but because carrying resentment would limit her own happiness and growth. Julia began to openly share her experiences with close friends and trusted colleagues, revealing previously hidden depths of her character and inspiring others through honesty about her emotional struggles and triumphs. This quiet courage resonated deeply within her community, further strengthening her relationships and expanding her influence beyond mere financial success. Julia finally understood her grandmother's wisdom fully. Strength wasn't measured by power or position, but by resilience, compassion, and authenticity in the face of adversity. Standing alone in peaceful silence before her grandmother's grave, Julia felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not merely in what she'd achieved professionally, but in who she had become emotionally. In that powerful, private moment, she knew beyond doubt that her true victory was reclaiming herself. As winter softened into spring, Julia's renewed strength became vividly apparent not only within herself but throughout every aspect of Weston Alpine Resort. Guests, investors, and employees alike openly admired her authentic leadership, recognizing her as a powerful example of ethical courage and genuine resilience. Media outlets continued to feature Julia prominently, emphasizing her journey from quietly underestimated spouse to inspirational CEO who had transformed personal betrayal into meaningful empowerment. Julia's public persona was no longer defined by the shadows of Connor's legacy, but rather by her own quiet determination and integrity. Interviews highlighted her thoughtful insights into overcoming adversity, encouraging others facing similar challenges to find strength in vulnerability and dignity. Within her community, Julia's influence blossomed further. She found herself frequently invited as a keynote speaker at prominent conferences and charity events, warmly welcomed by audiences eager to hear her story firsthand. Yet, despite growing fame, Julia remained humble and approachable, never forgetting the quiet lessons of her grandmother that shaped her strength. Behind the scenes, Julia carefully implemented new corporate initiatives, emphasizing transparency, accountability, and compassionate leadership, transforming Weston Alpine Resort into a beacon of ethical business practices. Her heartfelt commitment to these principles resonated deeply with staff, fostering loyalty and enthusiasm across all levels of operation. Externally, Julia's quiet victory inspired countless people worldwide. Letters, messages, and posts filled her office daily from individuals moved by her resilience and grace, each voice reinforcing that her experiences had genuinely impacted lives far beyond Aspen. Online, her story continued trending positively, becoming a symbol of empowerment, particularly among women navigating their own struggles with personal and professional betrayal. The hashtags associated with her journey became rallying points for discussions about emotional strength, integrity, and authenticity, further amplifying her reach and positive influence. Privately, Julia felt profound gratitude for the admiration and support she received, though she never allowed it to alter her grounded humility. Each acknowledgement strengthened her resolve to lead responsibly, authentically, and compassionately. Ultimately, Julia recognized that the public admiration wasn't merely about overcoming betrayal, it was recognition of the deeper truth she now embodied. Quiet strength, compassion, and integrity were the truest forms of success. Months after the storm had finally passed, Julia found herself seated comfortably for a candid, heartfelt interview watched by millions around the world. In this quiet yet powerful moment, she shared openly, speaking honestly about her emotional journey, the pain of betrayal, the courage required to confront deceit, and the profound strength she'd discovered within herself along the way. With gentle clarity, she reminded viewers that adversity was not something to fear, but rather an opportunity for profound personal transformation and growth. Her voice, calm and reflective, carried sincerity and warmth as she addressed anyone struggling silently, offering encouragement drawn directly from her own experience. "I have learned," she shared thoughtfully, "that strength isn't about never feeling broken. It's about acknowledging your pain, quietly gathering your courage, and choosing integrity, dignity, and compassion over bitterness. True victory comes not from revenge, but from rising above circumstances with grace and authenticity." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring countless others facing similar battles to find strength within themselves. Following the interview, Julia returned home, pausing briefly at her grandmother's portrait. She smiled warmly, recognizing the quiet wisdom and fierce independence that had guided her path. Julia felt proud, not simply of the empire she had reclaimed, but of the person she'd become in the process. Authentic, resilient, and deeply empowered. As she gazed out at the breathtaking mountain landscape that had witnessed her greatest struggles and triumphs, Julia felt at peace, embracing a future filled with possibility, hope, and continued growth. Her journey had begun with betrayal, yet ended in profound self-discovery, and in that quiet, reflective moment, Julia knew without doubt that the real treasure she'd reclaimed was herself. Unbreakable, empowered, and finally free to live on her own terms. The powerful lesson at the heart of Julia Weston's story is that true strength comes from resilience, dignity, and integrity, even when faced with betrayal and adversity. Julia's journey reveals that challenges, no matter how devastating, present an opportunity to discover one's authentic self and inner courage. Rather than surrendering to bitterness or revenge, Julia embraced quiet strength, calmly strategizing, patiently gathering evidence, and courageously confronting deceit. Her unwavering composure and ethical clarity ultimately transformed personal betrayal into profound empowerment, demonstrating that integrity and compassion are far more powerful tools than anger or resentment. Furthermore, Julia's story teaches us never to underestimate ourselves or let others define our worth. Through her experience, we learn the value of self-respect, forgiveness, and emotional authenticity as foundational to true leadership and personal fulfillment. Ultimately, Julia's triumph is not merely reclaiming her empire, but reclaiming herself, recognizing that real success isn't measured by external power, but by inner strength, authenticity, and the courage to stand gracefully amidst life's storms. Her inspiring example resonates deeply, reminding us all that even the most painful experiences can lead to profound personal transformation and renewed strength.